All right, welcome to an interview with Lorraine Dallmeier for Canary Green, our non-profit here on the Canary Islands, where we work really hard to, make tourism more sustainable and help travelers to find better solutions. And, my interest is, of course, skincare, and it is your interest as well as sustainability. So I really wanted to hear your opinion, or just having a talk about what can we do about the products, the amenities that we get in hotels, and why is it important, and so on. But maybe we start off with giving everyone an overview. What are personal care products?
Okay, let's go straight back to the beginning. So personal care products are products that we put on our body to clean, to enhance our appearance, slightly modify our appearance sometimes as well. They're things that you put on your skin. They're things that you put on your hair. Personal care products are also used. You've got oral care products. You've got all sorts of different kinds of personal care products. But basically, any type of cosmetic generally falls in this category. We're talking here in Europe. Obviously, it's a slightly different definition in other parts of the world, but let's, for ease of argument, say it's basically all cosmetics.
Yeah. And what are the environmental effects, or that personal care products can have or have? I'm thinking packaging, I'm thinking microplastics, so the ingredients. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So the effects of cosmetics on the environment is something that the industry is only really starting to talk about publicly. I know a lot of the smaller brands have been talking about this for years, but the bigger brands, the big giants, the multinationals, are only really just starting to have this conversation. And of course, we've all heard about packaging. We all know the issues with plastics, and the personal care industry, the cosmetics industry, is one of the biggest problems, I think, in that overall discussion, because of course we've seen the mountains of plastic that have just gone into the environment from the cosmetics industry over the years. But the issue is bigger than that. It's not just packaging. It's also to do with the ingredients that go into it. It's also to do with the shipping and the carbon footprints and the water footprints and the ecological footprints of the formulations that are made. And ultimately, and this always makes people feel slightly uncomfortable when I talk about this, but ultimately it's also about the amount we consume. Because back in the 60s, people only used to wash their hair once a week. Now, of course, we're told we have to wash it every day in order to be hygienic. People didn't wear makeup until the 20s or 30s. It was not something that was deemed to be appropriate for women. So in a very short period of time, in 100 years, we have changed from not really using much in terms of personal care products. And if we did use them, often people used to make them themselves, to consuming vast quantities of personal care products and feeling like we need the social media shelfie on show all the time with as many products as possible on there. So yeah, it's packaging, it's ingredients, it's manufacturing, it's shipping, and it's consumption.
Exactly. And what are some negative impacts that can happen down the line, or that happen? Or yeah, I'm thinking microplastics. Why are they a problem?
Well, microplastics, of course, you've got the plastics that are used in packaging. And as we know, plastics are generally not recycled at the levels that they should be. I think here in the UK, only 7-8% of plastics are actually recycled. It's incredibly low.
Yeah.
So those plastic containers can break down into smaller particles, which then break down into further smaller particles, which can end up in the environment. But microplastics are also used in cosmetics. You have the actual sort of hard microplastics, although microbeads are being phased out. But you also have liquid plastics. A lot of makeup contains liquid plastics. You're putting it on your lips, you're putting it on your eyes, you're putting it all over your face. People aren't even aware of the fact that these are plastics. Saying that, whilst it is a problem, whilst the personal care industry should not be formulating with plastics, because I think we as a species can move beyond that now, it's not as big a problem as many other industries out there in terms of clothing, for instance, in terms of, one of the biggest culprits in the EU is the makers of people who make football grounds, AstroTurf. There's all sorts of issues to do with microplastics around that. And thankfully, the European Commission is now phasing that out in the coming 10 years.
Yes, that's good. So to talk more about sustainable tourism, you know, you go to a hotel and there is a whole basket basically of these amenities. And what do you think about those kind of products? I guess you know, read the ingredient list if they have any. And yeah, what do you think about this practice?
It's interesting because well, pre-COVID times, I used to travel a lot. I've traveled all over the world. It's nice when you walk into a bathroom and you see all the little products. We've been conditioned to think that's what should be there when we go into the bathroom of whatever hotel we're staying in. Now I look at it and I think, oh, these tiny little packages, what a waste. And what are people going to do if I don't use them? Will the unused, unopened ones be reused for the next customer, or will they be thrown out entirely? So now I sit there wondering what's going to happen with them. And I tend not to touch them anymore. I tend personally to take my own bottles of shampoo and conditioner with me on holiday, also because, as you say, I look at the formulations that are there and I think, I don't really want to put this on my hair or my skin, to be honest. I think I can do better than this. So I think there's a lot of conditioning that's been going on for decades where we have been conditioned to expect all of these amenities there when we walk into the bathroom. We think it's a luxurious experience, but actually it's just a huge waste, to be honest.
Yes, it is. I actually just read, like, you know, was looking through a report and it said, I think it was like 70% of the people who were asked that they would like to make better choices when it comes to these kind of things, to products. And so I think we start thinking that way, just like you're saying, you walk into a hotel room and you don't see it as a luxury anymore, you see it as a waste.
Yeah.
So I really wonder if that still is true. What hotels, I'm thinking what hotels are thinking about having to have these amenities, or are we consumers really still wanting it? How can we find out? What can we do? Yeah.
I think most consumers probably do still want them, because most consumers want to go on holiday and they want to feel that luxury experience when they get
Mm.
there. I think there's going to have to be an element of education from the tourism industry towards the consumer, towards the tourists themselves, to
Yeah.
sort of say, well, okay, you know how we've been asking you for all these years to hang your towels up if you don't want them to be washed again. We'd also like to hear from you about what you think of the amenities we provide. And of course, there are lots of budget hotels out there now who don't provide amenities anymore because they've
Mm.
realized it is just a waste. But I think the more luxury ones do still have that because there's still this expectation. And I think nowadays, there's no reason why we can't put more sustainable luxury in place.
Mm.
Refillable containers, for instance, on the wall. You know, often when you're in budget hotels, they have those sort of soap dispensers in the shower. Again, they're just white. They look a bit cheap and cheerful. They have a label on them that says shampoo, and you're thinking, what's in there? And often it's shampoo and body wash. So, I mean, it doubles for the whole body, basically. And at that point, I go, well, okay, I didn't bring anything with me. I'll just have to go with it. But I think hotels can play a big role actually in shaping the way that consumers view that and communicating about what's in some of these refillable containers. You could make them look really luxurious. You could publish the ingredients on them. You could explain what sort of shampoo is. You could maybe even offer a range of different shampoos. And at that point, then your customers, your tourists, they aren't discarding lots of little bottles. You're not having to discard lots of little bottles, and you can actually buy in bulk. So there are ways of doing this. I think it's just up to the hotels themselves to actually communicate with the tourists about it. And first of all, find out what their opinions are and then start to shape expectations a little bit.
Exactly. I think, yeah, finding out the opinions really, because now I see a lot of hotels do have sustainable, you know, it's not packaged in plastic anymore. It's packaged in paper. Yeah. So it looks more sustainable. And even some that have bigger dispensers, refillables, they look sometimes sustainable, you know, brown bottle and some flowers on it. And then you read the ingredients and it's liquid plastic. So I think it's also a lot of greenwashing going on. And but you, like you're saying, I really think too that the hotels have a responsibility to educate and find out where their customers are, and we as customers, as travelers as well, right? Bringing our own
Yeah.
things or telling them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hearts and minds can be changed. It's just often a slow process. Like I said, 50, 60 years ago, everyone washed their hair once a week. Now we've been conditioned to think it must happen all the time. Um, you know, Expectations shift in terms of personal care, and there's no reason why the tourism industry can't shift those expectations too and play a big role in the conversation, because if you change the hearts and minds of a few people, that will spread further and further, and ultimately then it will become the norm. It just always takes time to make these changes, and the same goes with all environmental awareness and all conservation and all sort of environmental protection that we put in place. People don't want to drive their car less, but 10 years ago, if we'd said, right, we're going to phase out all petrol and diesel cars and everyone will have electric in 15 years' time, everyone would have gone, no way. And now that is the reality of what's going to happen in the next decade. So it takes time, but it's absolutely possible.
Yes, exactly. And here on Tenerife, we even have green hydrogen cars. Like we are getting the first one in this month. So let's see about that. That is really, really cool. But so what would be your top tips on becoming a more mindful tourist or traveler? What can we do?
I think about the sort of personal care products that you want to use when you're going on holiday. And be realistic. How often do you encounter those personal care products in the facilities that you visit? I personally don't. So I tend to pack what I want and take it with me. If I know I'm going to be on holiday for 2 weeks, I will take a bottle of shampoo and a bottle of conditioner with me, and I'll put it in my bag and think, that weighs a ton. But it doesn't weigh a ton on the way home. If it even comes home, I might even be able to finish it and recycle it whilst I'm there. So be more mindful in thinking about what you consume and what it is that you want. The other thing I would say is speak to the facilities or the tourism facilities that you're visiting. Speak to the hotels. Ask them exactly what they have in place, because things only change once consumers start to put pressure on people. I see it, even in our help desk, the people who make the most noise get the most attention. It's just the very nature of customer service. So talk to people, challenge them, and do it in a kind and supportive way, but make it clear to them that this is something that's important to you. And the more people say these things to hotels, the more change you will start to see on a rapid basis.
Yeah, definitely. And so what could actually accommodations or establishments, hotels, what could they do? Um, I'm thinking of, are there any bigger distributors of these kind of products, or what would the solutions be for a conscious green hotel
Yeah,
to to
I think
yeah.
Yeah, I think the first thing is to talk to your tourists, to your customers, and start to put out some questionnaires to find out how important it is to them. If you find it isn't important to them, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. That means you have some work to do in trying to convince them that it is important, because we're all in this together. I think that's the one thing that people need to remember. You don't wait until pressure is put on you. You start to lead the conversation, and then you're seen as a leading person in that conversation, which will attract a different type of tourist to you. The other thing is start to think about exactly as you said, where you get your products from. So
Mm.
you might be sourcing from, I don't know, a particular manufacturer that can specifically cater to the tourism industry, that provides lots of little bottles, or can provide in bulk because it's cheap. But maybe look at some local companies to you who make more sustainable, more natural ingredient formulations, and see if they could provide in bulk to you. There are so many amazing indie brands out there. I mean, we train up thousands of them, and they would be delighted with that sort of contract. And there's no reason that indie brands couldn't specialize specifically in the tourism industry and provide whole vats of shampoo and conditioner that can be dispensed into refillable dispensers around the bathrooms of whatever facility that is available. So yeah, I think it's all about communication, understanding where people are, education, and then maybe starting to forge connections with people who make more sustainable personal care products and figuring out what fits better with your facility.
Exactly. And I love what you're saying with using small and local brands, because that way those big establishments can give back to the actual local community as well. So yeah, I really love that. Do you have any resources where people could find out more about, any books or apps or anything where people could find out more about, um, ingredient lists on their products if they want to double check this tiny soap in the hotel room? Maybe I
Yeah.
find some and link them below.
There are some out there. It's not easy because there is a lot of pseudoscience as well around some of these apps. I tend not to recommend too many of them because once you actually delve into it, there's a lot of fear mongering that isn't necessarily always based in science and chemistry. There is a company, or an organization, I should say, a nonprofit called the Plastic Soup Foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
they have, I think it's called My Little Plastic Footprint. They have an app and you can scan products, personal care products, I believe, in there, and it tells you whether they contain microplastics or liquid plastics. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Sustainability is not as simple as checking ingredients, though, because, for instance, it could be that your ingredient was manufactured in a lab and it's synthetic, and that might well have a lower carbon footprint than the equivalent type of ingredient that was harvested somewhere. So it's a fine balance. It's not something that you would be easily able to fully research yourself without delving into it. And that's why I think it's better to buy into a brand that has certifications in place, that is very open and transparent about what they stand for. And then you can actually question that brand rather than having to be the chemistry detective yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Transparency is a big trend we see in anywhere, right? All right,
Yeah.
Lorraine, thank you for this. Where can we find you and connect with you?
So I run Formula Botanica. You can find us at formulabotanica.com. We teach people online how to formulate their own organic and botanical cosmetics. We're also across all social media platforms at Formula Botanica. We're very active on Instagram in particular. And you can follow me on Instagram as well at Lorraine Dallmeier, where I like to talk about my business, sustainability, whatever takes my fancy that particular week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.